This study is a research that pinpoints Kosovan teachers' jobs stressors. So basically, a workplace study that discusses how stressful it is to be a teacher. And the questions that this study looks at are what is the relationship between workplace stress and stress-related variables among teachers in Kosovo? Um, are there age and gender related patterns of workplace stress in Kosovo? And do marital status, educational level, and working experience play a role in stress? How does stress related to the teaching profession in Kosovo compare to other countries? So the methods of the study were that there were almost 800 random teachers from Pristina and Ferizaj. The NSAD stress questionnaire was what they used, which is basically just 25 yes or no questions to see if you are experiencing stress in the workplace. And a second measure was made specifically for this study, just a Likert scale, so 0 to 4, seeing if you experience stress regarding uh, work overload, then you would rank it 0 or 4, or lack of student discipline, low wages, etc. The results show that 33% of the participants reported high levels of stress. So, what I found was really interesting about this study was in Southeast Europe they experience really high levels of stress when it comes to teaching. Like for example, Greece is around 60% of people report high stress being a teacher, and these levels compare to like being a medical professional when it comes to stress. And it just teaching all across the world is one of the most stressful um, jobs, and then also medical. But when it comes to Kosovo, they're kind of like in the middle, not necessarily the most extreme, but definitely not the least. And this model, specifically when it comes to Kosovo, reached statistical significance in determining that two different relationships are there: place of residency and stress, and level of education and stress. So if you live in a rural area, well, they reach statistical significance that you will be more stressful than a person living in an urban area. And if you have less education, uh, say you just graduated high school, then you will suffer more stress than those that have more experience in the education field. Um, so, in the results section, they mentioned two specific parts that and gave some examples for why that might be. It's tough in rural areas to find students that are disciplined, and then also in rural areas, it's tough to find respect from your supervisors. And also, when it comes to education or the level of education that a professor has, or just a teacher in general, or it may be difficult to link to previous experiences to understand how to do the role of being a teacher because they didn't have the proper training. Um, but even though some other variables didn't have statistical significance, there were strong correlations with stress levels. So, for example, older participants showed considerably more stress than the younger participants because they felt like they should be paid more. It was tough to move around as much because as they're getting older, they wish that it wasn't such a physical working environment as it is to be a teacher, standing in front of the board and discussing, and giving lectures. So they thought that they should be paid more and that they feel just stressed in their everyday life. So the key takeaways from all this is that Kosovan teachers felt they had inadequate wages, physical working environment, undisciplined students. So finding ways to reduce these impacts or these stressors may be key to improving the quality of life for teachers, and as a result, increase effective performance, which we can also relate to just teachers in America as well or across the world. That finding ways to reduce their stressors will in turn affect or increase their effective performance as a teacher. One way to do this would be just educate the teachers. But I mean, there's already so many programs that are trying to do this, government-run programs, and it's still taking a very long time to do so. So proper training and resources to support them in this profession is key. Yeah. So thank you for listening.
Thanks, Everett. So yeah, I mean, and we've dealt with teachers and universities and K-12 schools, and I mean, I think this is very common across the board of just feeling, undisciplined children, disrespect from administration, or not respecting them enough, low wages. These are all kind of, I think, some cross-cultural stressors here.
Yeah, that's just highlighting a larger issue with educators, right? We should be supporting our educators way more.
Yes, they should be getting paid way more.
Yeah. I guess that just highlights another kind of for-profit.
I'm actually, I like the fact that in rural areas, the kids seem more undisciplined was interesting to me, because I would predict it to be more in urban areas. The kids are, I mean, at least in this country, because rural areas sometimes are more conservative or whatever, more religious, etc.
So what does that have to do with behavior?
Because it said in rural areas, there's at least maybe I'm reading this wrong. In rural areas, there's some link between undisciplined students and stress of teachers. Like there's more undisciplined students. There's more stress from undisciplined students in rural areas, essentially.
Yeah.
Is that right?
There's statistical significance between place of residency and stress. So
okay.
The rural areas, the teachers there was a statistical significance that they expressed more stress than the urban areas. And this study provided a potential explanation that it might be that they have undisciplined students or lack of respect.
So they didn't do like any kind of mediation effect. They just kind of hypothesized that it might be from that. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
All right. Well then,
this is like there's only one study on teachers in Kosovo right now. Just because it doesn't get as much attention.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but then the thing that I was surprised by might not even be true. So it's just
I mean, we could try and hypothesize other reasons, but that does seem to make the most sense.
Too many stressors.
Yeah, it might just be the lack of respect from their supervisors
is
so strong that it already makes statistical significance just from that.
Right.
Also, I don't know what it's like to live in rural Kosovo. It might be completely different than rural America.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking their communities, because like I did a study a little bit ago on child labor, and the fact that one of the big issues with that is that it hinders children from receiving an education, and it keeps them kind of in this cycle, this generational cycle, right? And so I think of situations like this where clearly, I mean, they have that, but if they have this high turnover and different things, and maybe kids are lacking engagement as well, it can impact just those overall communities, especially if they're more rural. And I kind of wonder what the long-term effects of that are.
This made me think of when I read the kind of that point on disciplining your your kids more, kind of a thing. I always think of how a lot of times I feel like it's an easy out or easy solution to a very complex problem. I feel like there's almost compounding variables that make it I don't know. When I think of I don't know, with somebody who maybe a family that may not have enough resources to live day to day, when that's an issue, when you have parental problems, when you have family problems, when you there's so many different things that contribute to that. So I almost am hesitant to write off this finding just discipline your kids more, because there's so many variables that come into that. If they have more support, more infrastructure from I don't know, the school system, from parents in the area, from the government, from whoever, maybe that wouldn't be as big of an issue, but there's a lot of different variables there.
Well, one thing that I heard when I've worked with some teachers is that they feel like they can't discipline the kids because they don't have the support from their administration, and their administration doesn't like this is one thing that I've heard from one school in particular. I don't know if it's across other schools, but like they feel like they can't, the administration doesn't actually uphold any consequences for kids when the teachers want to discipline the kids in some way, when they want to send them to the office or whatever, that there's no actual consequences. So the kids just feel like, well, we can do whatever we want then. And I think maybe so that's linked to like this kind of respect or support from administration.
I wonder, because I know, I mean, I can speak for the South, like Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia, I think even South Carolina, I thought. So all of these states are experiencing teacher shortages right now. They already were prior to the pandemic, but the pandemic, I mean, it didn't force, but because of it, a lot of teachers that were right there and that could retire did, because, they were like, it's just not worth it. Having to learn a new style of teaching, meaning having to do things virtually and that sort of thing. So, I mean, they are having a hard time finding enough teachers. And I heard on the news just the other day here in Alabama that they were like, if you ever wanted to teach, now is the time. We're waiving certifications and we're waiving this just to get bodies in the classroom.
Crazy.
And yeah, it is crazy. And so I'm wondering if, if that is also those added factors. When you have fewer teachers, then you have much larger classroom sizes. And then you also have teachers who don't have the type of educational background, the type of experience they need. But when you've got someone there, let's say with all of that they don't have the training, the educational background, they could have all the heart and desire in the world. But when you've got an overcrowded classroom of children who are coming from all different types of backgrounds and home environments, and that have, all kinds of needs that they may have that aren't being met, it's kind of just a giant recipe for disaster and dysfunction.
Yeah. And
that's a lot to place on someone. And I can imagine even in Kosovo, I mean, I'm wondering, like, how did the pandemic affect, their education systems? And then not to mention the fact that what are they like, I don't know, the war in Kosovo was over, like was it in the 90s or the 2000s? I'm not quite sure. But so
Yeah,
this is a post-war, to me, a relatively recently post-war nation too. And so, I mean, you're still rebuilding infrastructure and things like that from that. And
and there's probably collective generational trauma that's still, there. So
absolutely.
There's so many different complex issues and we rely on our teachers and our educational system for the future of this world. If we don't have a good, we don't act like it, but like, I can't believe that we don't put more resources in our education. It's like, it's crazy.
I am with you. I know, like, people always say, tell your kids to go to school, learn to be, doctors, engineers, and lawyers. And so the students that are like in the top 20%, those are the kinds of careers, engineering, computer science, those are the kinds of careers that they are sort of guided towards. Like, these are the careers that have big payoffs. But I was always like, I want the smartest people to be teaching my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I want, the top 20%, I want y'all going into education because I need y'all teaching our kids and the next generation, but it is not something that has been widely encouraged, at least not in my community.
Teachers should be getting paid $250 a year, not like in some places they're getting paid $40,000 a year or something. It's crazy. It's like you can't make a living on it.
Exactly. I just saw a chart yesterday. Mississippi, the average salary is about $45,000, and I think that's the lowest in the country.
Can you imagine the quality of teachers and teaching and what people would do, like in terms of education, to like become a teacher if you got paid $250,000 a year to be a teacher?
Even 80 even 80.
Even 80, yeah. Well, because so like in California, a lot of them get paid 80. If you've got a master's and all kinds of stuff, if you get paid 80. But that's still in California very tough to live on. You can't support a whole family on 80,000.
Yeah.
If you've got a family.
Yeah, here you could. Here that would
Right.
be considered a good salary. And then,
Right.
and lots of families that are in education, I mean, it will be both spouses.
Right.
So imagine,
Right.
and so you got a 2-parent household that is going from making a combined 80,000 to now they're making 160,000. So look at how
Game changer.
Exactly.
Game changer.
And then you have your best people wanting to go into the field because they know they can live a decent lifestyle. They can support their family.
Yeah.
Doing something that they actually want to do and love doing.
Oh boy. Well, how do we get someone in office that will change this up and just start spending way more on education and way less on freaking military or something like that? All right, I got to jump.